I started the tally on my second morning ground side, and I never told anyone why. 41 marks to rotation, scratched in grease pencil on the inside of my left forearm, redone every dawn before the paint could sweat off. It wasn't superstition, it was arithmetic. 41 mornings meant 41 chances to do the small, stupid, necessary things right. And if I thought about it as anything bigger than that, I'd have stopped being useful. It started as a way to keep my hands busy in the minutes before first light, when the rest of the squad was still racked out, and the comms were quiet enough that you could hear the grass moving on its own. Mark the number, check the rifle, check the water, check the boots, for the kind of wear that turns into a limp 3 days later, when you can least afford one. By the third week, it wasn't a routine anymore. It was load-bearing. Take any one piece of it away, and something in me would have sagged that I couldn't afford to have sag. Not on a front where the briefings kept getting shorter, and the casualty boards kept getting longer. We were dug into the ash fields of Corin Vale, a flat gray plain under 2 pale suns, when the Calanthe came for us. The ash fields had no real cover to speak of. Pale, knee-high grass that bent and hissed in the wind, ground that held a boot print for exactly as long as it took the next gust to erase it. Our position was a shallow trench line scraped out the night before, more gesture than fortification, and we held it because command had decided the ridge 2 kilometers back was worth more than we were. No tree line, no ridge, nothing but ash-colored grass to the horizon in every direction, because the Calanthe don't ambush from cover. They don't need to. They walk out into daylight on purpose, in full view, so you can watch the blade kindle in their hand and understand exactly what's coming for you. That's the whole doctrine. Fear first, steel second. The one who found our position was tall even by their standard, plated in bone-colored armor scored with old fight marks, and it stopped 40 meters out and simply waited for us to notice it. That was the right. You were supposed to notice, and freeze, and feel the day you'd been counting toward turn into the last one. I noticed. I was lying prone in the grass with my rifle's bipod dug into ash, and I watched the blade come up off its housing in a long, unhurried arc, a blue-white line of contained fire that hissed when it cut the air. Corporal Desch, beside me, made a sound I'd never heard a grown man make before. That was also the right working as intended. It walked toward us at a deliberate, unbothered pace. No cover, because it didn't believe it needed any, and from what I'd read in the briefing packets, it usually didn't. The Calanthe had broken 3 Allied positions on this front without losing a fighter, not because their kindled blades were unstoppable. A rifle round does what a rifle round does to flesh and bone, theirs included, but because nobody held their nerve long enough to put the round where it needed to go. The blade right wasn't a weapon. It was a question, asked at 40 meters, and almost everyone answered it by breaking. The briefing packets had tried to prepare us for the size of it, the deliberate pacing, even the sound the blade made, but nothing in those pages had prepared me for how long 40 meters actually takes to close at a slow, unhurried walk. It is a very long time, long enough to watch the grass bend around its boots, long enough to count the old scoring on its plate armor, 7 marks on the left pauldron alone, 7 other engagements where this exact approach had ended exactly the way it was built to end. Long enough, it turned out, for one more thing besides. I checked my mag count, 26 rounds. Then, because it was past dawn and I hadn't done it yet, I pulled up my sleeve and made the 40-second mark. I didn't decide to do it as some kind of statement. I want to be honest about that because people have made it into more than it was in the retelling. I did it because it was the next item, in order, on the list of things I did every morning, and my brain, under that kind of pressure, had narrowed down to exactly that. The list, the order, the next item, and the next item happened to be the tally. The Sentinel stopped walking. I didn't understand why until later, when one of the Calanthe defectors who worked with our liaison office explained the right to me properly. The blade kindling isn't meant to kill at range, it's meant to be watched. Every motion of it, the unhurried draw, the slow approach, the unmistakable size of the thing coming toward you, is built and rehearsed across centuries to put a very specific picture into an opponent's head. This is already over, and some part of you has already surrendered. You just haven't caught up to your own body yet. They read your face for it. They read your hands. A widened eye, a missed breath, a weapon that drifts off target by even a few degrees. That's the signal they're trained to watch for. the moment the fight is already won, and the killing is just paperwork. What they are not trained for, what nothing in their doctrine accounts for, is an opponent who looks at the blade, looks at the 40 meters of open ground, and uses the time to finish marking her own arm. "You should already be dead," it said. The translator strip on my collar caught it half a second late, flat and toneless, the words landing after the Calanthe had already taken 2 more steps. It wasn't a boast, not exactly. It was closer to a diagnosis that had stopped matching its patient. I didn't answer with words. I finished the line under the 40-second mark, rolled my sleeve back down out of habit, and put the first round into its forward knee joint, where the defector had told us the plating ran thinnest. It went down hard, the kindled blade guttering out as its hand lost the grip discipline to hold the charge steady, and for a moment it just knelt there in the ash, plated head turned toward me, and I understood. The way you understand a silence in a room more than any word spoken in it, that I had broken something in it that the round hadn't touched at all. Desh got his nerve back somewhere in the next 4 seconds and put 2 more rounds into its center mass, and that was the end of the engagement, fast and unglamorous, the way most of the real ones are. No music, no slow motion, just ash kicked up, a body and bone-colored plate, and my hands a little numb around the rifle. We pulled back to the line before dark. Command debriefed me twice, because apparently no recorded engagement on that front had ever had a Calanthe Sentinel hesitate mid-approach, and they wanted to know what I'd done differently. I told them the truth, which is that I hadn't done anything differently. I'd done the same thing I do every morning. I just happened to be doing it in front of someone whose entire training told him it shouldn't be possible. The intelligence officer running the second debrief wanted a technique, something repeatable, something you could put in a training manual and hand to the next squad rotating into the ash fields. I didn't have one to give him. What I had instead was 42 days of the same small motion, repeated until it had worn a groove into me deeper than fear could reach on short notice. And I told him as much, and watched him write down something that wasn't quite that and file it anyway. The Calanthe pulled their order off that stretch of front 2 weeks later. Officially, it was a redeployment. Unofficially, the defector liaison told me there was a phrase moving through their ranks that didn't translate cleanly. Something close to the marking did not stop, meaning, as near as anyone could render it, that they'd found a human who looked directly at the blade right and went back to her own small bookkeeping instead of flinching, and that this had cost them something they couldn't easily get back. Doctrine, built on being watched, doesn't survive being ignored. Desh asked me once, much later, on a transport home, with nothing left to watch out the viewport but stars, whether I'd been scared out there. I told him the truth. I'd been scared the whole time, every one of those 40 meters, scared in a way that sat underneath the counting rather than instead of it. The tally had never been about not being afraid. It had just been the one thing I trusted myself to do correctly regardless, and on that stretch of gray grass, that turned out to be enough. I still have the scar where the grease pencil sat too long against old shrapnel scoring on that same forearm, a thin pale line running under where the numbers used to go. I don't tally days anymore. There's nothing left to count down to. But sometimes, in a long meeting or a slow checkout line, I catch myself rolling my sleeve and looking at that bare patch of skin out of pure habit, the way you reach for a tool that isn't on your belt anymore. And I think about a kneeling sentinel 40 meters out, and a translator strip half a second behind a sentence I never finished answering, because by the time it landed, I was already looking back down at my own arm.